what reality has to show you by looking through its cipher.
One viewer said you seem to suggest that our reality is some sort of video game with the objective to expose Oz, talked about that last time, and claim some sort of prize. The viewer wants to know, what exactly is the prize? And once we claim it, then what?
That's an interesting way of putting it. I think that built into the resonance of society is a hermetic journey, whether we want it to be there or not. It's probably more akin to, say, a tomato vine or a stake that the tomato is allowed to slowly climb as it grows. So what is the purpose of a tomato? The purpose of the plant maybe is to reach the sun and to bear its full fruit. So you could look at man in the same way, that our purpose is here to flourish on the vine. This vine is a living cross, and the symbology and the archetypes of what reality really is have no choice but to be all around us. This is what I mean by the truth is always in the room. We as humans will put costumes on the truth. We will try and disguise it as something else simply to make ourselves feel more comfortable with the truth that's actually in the room. So is the journey forced on us? No. Is the journey a requirement before you die? No. It's simply an ability and a framework to grow or to expand and reach closer to the source and just bear a riper fruit.
But I want to talk about something a little bit different now. Something that a lot of my viewers have been exposed to on my channel before, and that's the Mandela effect. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we discussed that last time. Many of my viewers are no doubt familiar with it, which, if you read the mainstream definition, believes our collective memory, such as things like movies, songs, names, logos, and even geography, are false. Personally, I believe the Mandela effect is real. It's not false memory. I want to know, what are your thoughts on the Mandela effect? Did reality actually change? Is it false memory, a combination of the two, or maybe something else? What do you think, James?
I think that mankind has been pulled out of a mold very recently, and that mold required that he have an objective concept of reality. All of us felt better having a crutch that if all of us died, there would still be this reality that would have these rules and that would function. That's been necessary for us because we've learned, instead of crawling, our consciousness is learning to stand up and walk. It's very, very tricky business, and it requires a lot of framework that we build for ourselves. The aperture of the sun, I do believe, is slowly meant to unwind and unfurl. It's the dilation becomes more apparent, and more source information comes in. This causes a lot of what you might call toxic thought if you were a plant that did not like this much light, or if you were not akin to it or used to it. I believe the Mandela effect is us understanding that objective reality was never actually accurate. It was simply a framework that we were using to build on, but we're not quite ready to embrace the full totality of what reality is, because that's a step that's just a little bit too far away. So we come up with ideas like the Mandela effect to explain, really to try and explain away objective reality. It's sort of like approaching the diving board and you're going right to the edge and you're looking how high you are. You haven't jumped yet, but boy, you were really close. You were really, really getting there. So it's a necessary step, I believe, to find this true understanding of what reality is. Everything that we experience is going to be stored in an exchange of sodium and potassium. All of those inputs and impulses are a kind of binary language that's rendered in all of our organs simultaneously and thrown into the amygdala. So when we recall things, what we're really doing is we're calling up the potassium signature that's been stored in all of our organs. Our body does something very similar to JPEG compression or GIF compression or even MP3 compression. It's able to reduce the experience down to its lowest common denominator or lowest salt. That's really all potassium is. So when we are recalling salt, we are going to find these compression shadows, compression arbiters that appear that are just necessary for the way we recall experience. We see these on JPEG files as little gray areas in the sky, or we might see these in MP3 files. If you're an audiophile, you'll start to notice, hey, I can hear a little bit of a difference in the way it's storing this beat. This is how our body's able to compress and decompress, compress and decompress life. We simply didn't notice it before because of how uncomfortable it would have been for us to start to let go of this concept of objective reality. That really is a terrifying thing when you've been brought up, not just in your life, but your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents. They really needed that maypole in the center, right? That central core reality to be there in order for us to reach enough stasis to build our own consciousness and bloom our own kind of flower. So to me, this is just a result of us becoming more comfortable with reality as it should be.
I was going to go on to my next question, but that leads me to ask you something else. So you said that our parents and grandparents were conditioned to believe that we live in this objective reality. And it seems to me that things are changing now, especially with the Mandela effect becoming, you know, in the collective conscious of humanity being known in the last 10 years or so. Do you think that we've been advancing over these last hundreds and maybe a couple, 2,000-3,000 years all the way to this level? Has it been a gradual up, or have we just accelerated in the last 50, 100 years? What do you think?
It looks like we have about 6,000 years to grow as fast as we can. And then there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be some sort of greenhouse reset. When I say greenhouse, I'm talking about this idea of Dojo Earth, not a greenhouse effect or any kind of thing like that. But a global semi-cataclysmic reset seems to occur every 6,000 years, sometimes every 12,000 years. These seem to happen on the cusp of Leo. It seems to happen on the cusp of Aquarius. It seems to sometimes happen in Scorpio and sometimes in Taurus. These are sort of the four corners or four resets of the Great Precession. Randall Carlson really covers this better than anyone else, I think. But if you start to look at the idea that this whole world's been reset and reset and reset, you can start to see how maybe it could be a garden. And maybe possibly the purpose of that garden is to literally grow consciousness. If you look at what we are here to do, we are here to consciousate the world. We're here to give it morality. We're here to find beauty in it. We're here to find ugliness in it. We're here to defeat it. We're here to make it grow. We're here to hold desperately to how much it means to us. This is a sort of fruit that's born by mankind, our understanding of this world. The entire world really turns to nothing when you start to devoid yourself, your consciousness from this center of it. So we seem to be serving a purpose. We seem to be growing some sort of a spine. We turn into bone, and those bone are simply the effects of the potassium as we live through time. So we're sort of like a coral reef. We're a living, breathing bone reef that simply goes through the ether of time. We process things, we understand things. If we do not do this in 6,000 years, it appears to be some sort of reset. I use 6,000 loosely. Randall Carlson would tell you 6,600. If you look at some of the Talmudic texts, they point to the idea of a 6,000-year timeline. In that timeline, you can start to realize how we as a culture would grow so desperate, knowing that there might be some cataclysm that's coming, that we would start to create and relive the very past that we came through. This is the oracle of mythology. So we would actually end up developing our own ark, our own Noah's Ark, some way of preserving ourselves from one generation to the next. This is probably a genetic chimeric ark. I'm getting way off topic right now, but my latest book talks specifically about just that concept.
What is your latest book?
Ark of Baphomet, which describes that there's the chimeric ark is actually the Aedom, Adam and Eve combined before the split, or a sort of seed. The seed of Enoch would be the closest thing that we might call this when we look at mythology. that Enoch, his name is the writer, the scribe, the one who scribes the new Adam. Adam is nested inside this chimeric ark, which would have every zodiac. What is the zodiac but all of the animals? So your genetic ark would be this sort of like genetic superstructure that's meant to survive a cataclysm and respawn after a great flood. These memories are stored in our mythology. That's why I call it the oracle of mythology. It's telling us the truth. All we have to understand is that that truth has been disguised by how uncomfortable we are with accepting what that truth says. So we will dress our oracles, we will dress our mythology to lie to us because the truth has to be in the room, but we're just not quite ready to fully accept how this process works.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I guess we can go off on a whole tangent, but I got a list of questions here that I want to go through, and I know we have limited time today. I was going to ask you your thoughts on CERN, but I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. I'll still ask it anyway, but many people think CERN is causing the Mandela effect, and I would say, based on your answer, that you would say that that's not true. Particularly because of the symbolism associated with CERN, and people think they could be opening a portal to a demonic world leading to pandemonium. Is there any basis to this, or is this just another case of mankind trapped in his own fears? Because I think I know what you're going to say about the Mandela effect, but with regard to CERN, that CERN probably is not causing it. But I want to know, is that just another scapegoat and for man not being able to handle?
Yeah. If we can say CERN did this and CERN did that, we feel in control because it was man who actually did that. That's why we have a fetish about man's causing the weather. It makes us feel like we have more control, and all we have to do is just kill each other and all the death will stop. So it's a fantasy that plays out. The fact that there's not a dis in front of CERN is such a huge clue. It doesn't say discern. There is no discern. It is simply CERN. And I need you to understand that we have a vortex, a certain seat that's created. And on this seat, we will sit anyone as long as they agree to sit there. And that is the scapegoat. So if we can have an elite ring of secret people that control the world, regardless of if that's true or not, we will create an elite group of people that pretend to control the world because it makes us feel better. It gives us that technology of belief to allow the truth in the room, but still see through it. When you look at CERN, you're looking at one of the world's largest technological churches. All of their scripture is centralized into a very, very small group of people. Zetetically, a word we talked about last time, I cannot ever tell you whether or not the Higgs boson is real or not. It would require me going to this